And just like that, it is season 2 of Catch Some Soulshine. Thank you for joining me on this journey of healing. And I've gotten so much insight from all the guests that I've had on season 1 that I want to dig a little deeper in season 2. This season, I'm going to focus on healing your mind, igniting your soul, and embracing creative living. I know that you can live a joyful, inspired life if you take certain actions. I'm going to give you plenty of information to act upon. So grab a cup of coffee because it's time to catch some soulshine. Welcome to season 2 of the Catch Some Soulshine podcast. And I've really been focusing on individuals that can bring you some hope. This is Deb LawlessMiller. I met her in actually, it was by social media when I was vacationing in Florida, and I posted something about, my life. She reached out and we've met in person now, and she's written a book. I love what she has to say. So I will let you introduce yourself and tell them about your book.
Oh, sure. Well, it's so great to be here. I'm really excited to be on film with you, so to speak. Yeah, so my name is Deb LawlessMiller. I have been in recovery now. It's going to be 20 years in October that I have been in recovery from substance use disorder. I decided to write a book about my journey through recovery, addiction into recovery, and then into living life on life's terms. How I found my higher power and my faith just grew so much, and all the really wonderful things that happen in recovery. How you can learn to not use substances when terrible things happen in life, which terrible things do happen in life, whether you're sober or, in your addiction. So I really wanted to get that message out about how you can remain sober through life's trials and tribulations, and how important having a higher power is.
And one of the things that I love that you help people do is, I visited the sober recovery community in Florida, and I am a really huge proponent of there's not just one path to recovery. There's so many different things that we can use to enlarge our lives. We're all energetic beings,
Right.
That's energy makes our heart beat.
Yes.
It makes our blood flow. It makes our brain work, the neurons zapping each other. So I love the science behind it because, like in the 12-step program, they have a huge focus on the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I study the science of the brain, the research shows that it takes about a year for that brain to, start functioning like normal. So isn't that something how those two coincide?
Oh, for sure. There's no coincidences. Speaking for myself, it was easily a year before the fog lifted from my mind. My addiction was alcohol turned to opioids. And then, once I was addicted to the painkillers, that's all I wanted. Getting through that, just the detox alone is just treacherous, but you can get it. You can get through it. If I did, then anybody can, because I'm a big baby when it comes to being uncomfortable.
The thing that I loved about the recovery center, because it just meshes with my belief system so well, is that they have art projects, they have meetings, they have community outreach, they have beach things. Creativity is like a key factor for recovery of any kind: grief, trauma, substance use, because what it's showing is that, your brain has all these neurons, right? And they make this like net on the outside of your brain. And when you are engaging in creativity, whether it be singing, dancing, art, anything like that, working on your car, anything creative that you are engaging in, it makes those neurons mesh and form these new pathways, which we need those new pathways
if
Right.
we've had trauma, substance use, anything like that.
Yeah.
I loved that when I went to that center that you helped get started because
Right.
they have all of that.
They do have all of that. Yeah. So what you're talking about is a nonprofit that I was working with. In addition to writing, I also work with small nonprofits to kind of help them get up and running. I work with a family foundation that helps financially with these places. So I've been blessed with this opportunity to go to different small nonprofits that are really trying to get off the ground, but A, either have no idea how to do it, or B, might need a little bit of financial backing or whatever that is. I fell into what you're describing as Equal SRQ. It is a community recovery organization. It's a different way of recovering. And it's so great because I'm all about the 12-step programs and the fellowship. Like, to me, that saved my life. The fellowship, being with other people who could understand exactly how I was feeling that first year of like the fog clearing and surrounding myself with all of that energy. It's a positive energy that we're around. So I'm all about the 12-step program. But I also, after all these years, I understand that I personally needed more. I knew the steps, I knew the fellowship, I know the program, but I did need a little bit more. I needed just a community that maybe wasn't so focused on the 12-step recovery, but different ways of healing. Recovery organizations are just that. Every day they have a different thing, whether it's, learning how to make juice smoothies, or painting, or just having a get together at the beach. People who live in Sarasota, which is where I am, they've lived here sometimes their whole life, 2 miles from the beach, and have never been to the beach because they don't have transportation, or because they're living in their addiction. These organizations have the means to pick people up, bring them out to the beach, have just a gathering, just really no agenda. Let's just chat and see where you're at, and let me meet you there, and let's talk about how we can get you better or get your family member better. What is it that you need? Going to AA or NA, you have your sponsor and you talk about the steps and you go through the steps, and it's very structured, and it's very necessary. But then you also need, like you said, that creative avenue to just shut your brain off and create something. We talk a lot about journaling into recovery or out of your addiction. I personally did not like to journal. And it's funny because I ended up writing a book. So it's like, that makes no sense, right? But I tried journaling, but what was happening was when I would go back to read my journals, I would go back there, and it was an uncomfortable place for me to be. I needed to start my recovery, get that ball rolling, and then when I felt like I could revisit the past outside of the steps, then I was willing and able to do that. And I also, so that's when I wrote my book, so I was 18 years sober when I started to write my book. But I needed that much time to really make sure that I could go through everything that I went through. And it wasn't about necessarily looking at my addiction. It was more about what happened when I was in recovery. The hard times that happened, I just didn't want to revisit it. My son, when he was 13, was diagnosed with bone cancer, and he ultimately lost his leg. His father passed. We had a lot of loss during that time. I could handle looking back at the addiction part of it. I was like, that's okay. I'm good with that. I have forgiven myself. I have done what I needed to do. I'm good with that. It was reliving the pain of watching your child go through something incredibly painful and life-changing. And for those of us that know, life happens when you're in recovery, no matter what. I had to be ready to look at that again, relive that, and know that I could survive reliving that. because of the tools and the support that I've gotten through the fellowship. So it's all kind of intertwined that way.
That makes sense. And I have really gotten into journaling, and I do believe that it's very important to, write about what you're going through and the things that are happening and have a recollection of that. However, my new way of journaling is more of a manifestation because I journal about, for example, my youngest son. Him and I have a tough relationship at times, and we butt heads. Sometimes I just don't even want him around, right? And I was talking to my coach about it, and she said, "Why don't you journal what you envision for him, what you really want for him, and write it real, like it's already happening?" So I wrote this huge journal entry about he's successful, he's stable, he's doing well, he's this and that. And about 4 weeks ago or so, he started this landscaping business. He's
Go figure.
doing well
It's
and
amazing.
he's making money. He has this girlfriend and we really like her. And they came over for dinner twice now. And we had a beautiful, pleasant interaction at dinner. And I was like, this stuff works.
Yeah, it does.
Because I've spent so much time, even in recovery, living in despair and the problem that I have come to this place where I don't have time for that anymore.
Mm.
My life is a journey and every day is a gift. And no matter what's happening, and like you, I've had a lot of tragedy.
Yeah.
I choose to be happy and joyous and
Yeah.
free right here, right now, no matter what's going on. And I do think that the 12 steps gave me that solid foundation
Yes.
to live that way today. I don't have to, and even if I revisit the past, like I used to be able to not look at Brad's pictures or I would start crying.
Yeah.
And because of this deep inner work and prayer and meditation and journaling and art, like I can look back
Yeah.
a lot of times at things that have happened and have a joyful response to it. But that takes work.
It does. I love what you said about, you spend so much time with the problem. And then
Yeah.
when you flip it to, let's talk about the solution. And that's exactly what you did. And you put pen to paper. I love that.
Mhm.
And I had been working on that as well, that visual manifestation. But I love that you said that's what you're journaling about. I can absolutely do that because that to me is like, okay, I'm not there anymore. I want to move forward. So
Mhm.
how do I do that? And so writing down what you want things to look like as if they're already happening. I love that. That's a beautiful idea. I'm going to start doing that.
I don't know if I told you about my Florida house story. We had been vacationed in Florida for years and years and years at Fort Myers Beach with
Mhm.
my parents and my siblings and the kids. The year before the hurricane, my mom and her husband said, "Well, they tripled the rent of the place that we were staying on the beach. We can't afford to go anymore." And so I just started thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have a little place in Florida that we can vacation at and keep this going? And then I started thinking, well, I don't know that I necessarily want to be at Fort Myers Beach. Let me look in Sarasota because it's just such a vibrant,
Yeah.
artsy community, and they have these beautiful beaches and they have so much more, right? I just started looking on Zillow just for the fun of it, like no plan whatsoever. I found this little 2-bedroom. I just pushed want more info on Zillow, and this realtor called me and he said, "Well, this house just went on the market today. It's going to have several offers. If you want it, make an offer." I'm
Mm.
like, okay, I haven't even talked to my husband about this. I don't know. How am I going to get this money? Blah, blah. But I said, okay,
You
put an
did.
offer in. So my husband comes home from work and I'm like, oh God, am I going to tell him? We went out to dinner that night. We were sitting at dinner. I said, oh, by the way,
I
I
just
made a I made an offer on a house in Florida. And he goes, "You what?"
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and that little 2-bedroom was more than what we paid for this house, just
Yes.
saying.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I said, "Oh, don't worry, it's fine. I'm probably not gonna get it because he called me back and said there's, like, 14 offers on the house.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Oh, okay, good." We get home and, we're relaxing. He calls back the next day and he goes, because I had a huge down payment that I was gonna put on
Mm,
it. I cashed in retirement, I borrowed money from people, we took out a signature loan, we did whatever we could do. He
yeah.
goes, "Can you get this money for the down payment?" I go, "Yes," not knowing how I would, but I said,
Right,
"Yeah."
right. You said yes, yeah.
He goes, "You got the house." I told Barry, "We got it." But, we both love it there. I
Yeah.
love Sarasota.
Oh, I
I
know, it's
loved it more than I even thought I would,
me too. I
you
know,
know?
it's so great.
And I think that's the power of saying, "Yes, I can."
Right.
Same with recovery. Sometimes we're taught, I hear this in recovery circles, "It's gonna be so hard, and you gotta do this, and you might fall," and maybe if we changed our mindset from the get-go saying, "You can do this,"
Of
you
course.
know, "Just do this stuff, go to meetings, get people to support you." I wonder if, the rates would be better. I don't know.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts about that?
I agree with you. I mean, for me, the hardest thing was going through the detox, the physical feelings of sickness, because again, I'm a big
Mhm.
baby and I don't like to be uncomfortable. There's, hundreds of thousands of people who have gone through it and you get through it and you feel better. It's just a matter of time. And then the work that you do on yourself, for me, it was liberating. It was understanding how my brain works and why I do certain things and why I don't do certain things. It was more about why I don't do certain things because I was always, somebody that ran away from any uncomfortable feelings and I was very much non-confrontational. I liked to learn that about myself and kind of figure out what it is that I needed to be doing differently so that I wouldn't fall back into the depths of that addiction and start again at square one, living life on life's terms. A disappointment happens, a tragedy happens, and your first instinct is to go numb yourself over it. If you don't, as long as you keep, instead of picking up the alcohol or the drugs, you pick up the phone and you call somebody who cares about you and they want the best for you, truly wants the best for you. And then you can move, they'll take your hand and get you the help that you need. Because when you're using and drinking and drugging, the people that are going to surround you are the ones that want you to stay down with them, stay where they are
Mhm.
doing the drugs and drinking and numbing and all of that, So, but when you're in sobriety, it's a whole different mindset, a whole different world, a whole different type of people that have been where you are and they know, what your life can be like. So they really want to help. And as far as the manifestation stuff, agreed. When an opportunity arises, and this is what I'm learning, because I keep on learning all, no matter how far into
Yeah.
this I am, no matter how old I am, if you're open to it and you're open to receiving new information, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get great information. And what comes to you is never a mistake or a coincidence. So you say yes to everything that comes your way, whether it's a second home that you don't know if you can afford, you got it because you're meant to have it, or being asked to be on a podcast, or whatever that may be. Like, say yes, because everything is in your path for a reason. And if it doesn't feel right, there's times when you can talk yourself into wanting something that's not right. When you're in recovery and you are doing the work on yourself, you'll have that inner voice saying, doesn't feel good, doesn't feel right. You'll be able to differentiate because you can't do things the easier, softer way. You really need
Yeah.
to do the work, but the work it's not hard. It's just liberating.
couple of nuggets, and I wish I would have written them down, but the first one that I want to recycle back and talk about is you said something that I just firmly believe in: open to receive.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's with all life. It doesn't even matter if you're not a person in recovery. I truly believe that the program of recovery is not an add to you program.
Yeah.
It's a takeaway. It's a
Yes.
takeaway. So what you're taking away is everything that blocks you off from the sunlight of the spirit, the energy, God, whatever you choose to call it.
Right.
Okay? Because that sunlight, God, energy is always there.
Yeah.
But we put roadblocks up. I could have said, oh, when he called me, I can't afford that. And
Yeah.
how am I ever going to come up with that money for a down payment? And no, not for me. But instead,
Yeah.
I said, I'll figure it out. And I did. I just was open
Yeah.
to receive.
Right.
And it's really the same with recovery
Yeah.
from grief,
Yeah.
from substances, all of that. When you start taking away this stuff, and that's the other thing, and I'm glad you said it again because I didn't write it down, but the ability to say yes. I had to learn that,
Me too.
because fear is
Oh,
what prevents that. So
we are.
what if you make a mistake? So what if you fail?
Yeah.
You can fail 5 times, but, that 6th time you're gonna get it.
Right. And it's never like you don't feel like you're failing. You just feel like you're still growing in the direction where you need to be. It's all going to uncover itself. We were just talking about this the other night, a group of women that I meet with and do a recovery book club with. I, for the longest time, made my world so small after when Hunter got sick because I was so fearful of stepping out, like making my world big, because then I was more apt to have pain come in. The more people I knew, the more whatever. It was like, no, I just wanted to live in my little shell, have just a few people. That way I was like, I felt like I was protecting my little circle. I knew that if another avalanche fell, it was going to suffocate. I was going to die in that avalanche. There was no way I could go through that again. Well, that's not living. That's not what our higher power wants us to do. My higher power, it wants me to celebrate everything that happens in my life. And the reason, good, bad, or indifferent. And the reason is because he's put me in a trusted position to be able to reach my hand out to somebody else who's going through a hard time that I have been through, and showing them that you can survive that, and that you can not only survive it, but thrive by helping other people. I feel that we're placed on this earth to love each other and to help each other, And one of the reasons why I wrote this book was because I remember there's a few things that really stuck out in when I was in my addiction about how I was feeling. Like, I remember feeling very scared and fearful and ashamed. But one of the things that really stuck with me was my feeling of, I don't know another addict. I don't know an alcoholic. I had no idea about AA and NA meetings. I grew up in an upper middle class family that was very tight and close and loving. There was no trauma. And then somehow I became a drug addict, and I was addicted and I didn't know where to turn. And I would read books, memoirs of people who were going through it, but they were famous people. They were people who had resources to help them or whatever that may be. And I was like, I just wish that I knew one person that was like me, because in my world, in my brain, addicts were people living on the street and robbing people and da 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 da. I just felt like there was nobody that I could relate to. And I wish that there was, that would have said to me, you're going to be okay. Now, if I had gone to meetings prior to me going into rehab, I would have met people like that, but I didn't, because I didn't know anything about the fellowship. So I wrote this book thinking I want to connect with the woman out there who has just spent the COVID with her 3 young kids at home, homeschooling them and trying to work and turning to a glass of wine to relieve. And then the next thing you know, you've got a problem and you can't stop drinking, or you can't stop taking, the Xanax or whatever it is. And she's looking around going, nobody else I know has this problem, and I'm scared, so that's why I wrote this book to that person.
I want to mention that the book is called One Little Pill, because I don't think we've said that.
No, we haven't.
If people are looking for the book, it's called One Little Pill.
It actually is 1 period, little period, pill period. Because if you type in one little pill, you might get a book about Viagra.
I think that we all have a certain person that we're trying to reach. And I love that you illustrated that so beautifully. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was a really inspiring conversation. And again, I will have all the links in the comments.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey of transformation and growth. I wanted to thank you personally and invite you to download a free journal that I've created featuring some of my art. And if you'd like a free print from my Rooted in Faith collection, please go to dawnreneebove.com and I will drop links in the comments. Hit that bell if you're on YouTube and subscribe to the channel on Apple or Spotify. Leave me a rating because that really does help expand the reach. Keep catching that soul shine. I'll see you next week.